how far is this going to keep going on? I mean, what is our future really going to shape up to be?
Well, unfortunately, we have a regime in power that has decided that they really want absolute global domination, and the way you do this is primarily by scaring the folks at home, so that first of all they have to rely on the government, and secondly they see their government as the good fighting the evil out there in the world. They're willing to give any amount of money that the Pentagon and the White House request for military and intelligence purposes, and on and on and on.
Right.
And so you're right that anybody who knows about 9/11 cannot help be suspicious about the London bombings, because there are so many parallels, and because the press is treating it in absolutely the same way, simply ignoring all the evidence that points against the official theory, and just gullibly repeating everything that supports the theory.
David, I was talking earlier about how our president talks about how God told him to do this and God told him to kill that. You know, coming from your background as a professor of philosophy, of religion and theology, why is our current leadership making so many references to God in everything that they do that involves violence?
Yeah, well, there's a non-serious answer and a serious answer to that. The non-serious answer, I think, was best expressed by Molly Ivins. She says, well, you know, the president says that God is speaking through him. She says, I really doubt that, because I think God knows how to pronounce nuclear. But the more serious response is that there is an ideology behind the neoconservative movement. By the way, I've just finished a great book by Andrew Bacevich, who had written earlier. He's a conservative, but he wrote a book called The American Empire, in which he told the truth. Now he's written a new book called The New American Militarism, and he shows how the neoconservative movement over the last 20 years, and particularly since 1995, has laid the foundation for this very aggressive foreign policy in which there's the proactive, preventive use of war and so on. And the sort of intellectual godfather of this movement is Leo Strauss.
Right.
Well, Strauss was personally a follower of Nietzsche. He thought that Nietzsche's view that God is dead, and therefore there are absolutely no moral principles in the universe, and therefore, you know, might makes right, that was the truth. But he said Nietzsche shouldn't have come out and said it out loud. That was his big mistake. And so what you need to do if you want power is to mouth a lot of pieties and use religion in order to get the people to support this. And as Andrew Bacevich says, this whole new, what he calls new American militarism, simply could not exist if it were not for, you know, 100 million evangelicals in the country who basically buy this new kind of imperialism.
Now, David, we only have a few more minutes, and then we're going to take some phone calls. So in the 3 minutes that we wrap up right here, can you give me something that someone listening to this show right now would have some hope or inspiration for the future of America, or possibly what now? What is the solution to this problem?
Well, one thing that is going to occur during the anniversary of the Downing Street Memo is a meeting, a convergence meeting in Washington, D.C. on July 22nd and 23rd and 24, in which there will be a convergence between 9/11 people, the Downing Street Memo people who are opposed to the war in Iraq, and other groups, say, who are against the use of depleted uranium and so on. And the hope is that a movement, a joint movement will arise out of this, and also a new kind of media, because a lot of the alternative media from around the country have been invited. And so there's the hope that maybe some new organization will be formed in which we might actually get real news that tells the truth out to the American people.
So if it's the case that elements within the government acted criminally to allow the attack to happen, what motivation do you see from the stuff that you've looked at as to why that would happen?
Well, I say if you read Bacevich's book, now I should say that Bacevich himself does not suggest that 9/11 was arranged or even deliberately allowed, and yet he gives this background information that shows that there would have been nothing better for the movement than 9/11. He himself says 9/11 was tailor-made to help them carry out their programs, and of course their programs were many.
It's actually old news.
To go into Afghanistan for the oil around the Caspian Sea, to attack Iraq, to authorize this dangerous new doctrine of preventive warfare, and to greatly increase the budget of the Pentagon, which includes an enormous amount of money for the Space Command, through which they can start using weaponized space and be able to control the whole globe. So their ambition is unlimited.
Oh, speaking of space, Bruce Gagnon's coming on the 29th at the First Unitarian Church. I just found out about that. Now, what's your current relationship with, say, Amy Goodman and the so-called left media? When I interviewed Mike Rupert in studio in this room a month or two ago, he made the comment, and I did read the transcript, that you basically were ambushed in a surprise attack by Amy Goodman and Chip Burleigh.
Well, I mean, I knew ahead of time that Burleigh was going to come on. What I didn't know is that Amy would not be neutral and would actually take his side in the argument. When they originally had me come on, they invited me to come on, it was to be a regular guest and be interviewed by Amy Goodman. Very late the night before, they called to say, and I was in Sicily and didn't have time to really adjust, so in that sense it was an ambush that I didn't have time to prepare for that kind of encounter. And that is just typical of a segment, not entirely, but a segment of the left-leaning intellectual world and press, that they rule out in principle the possibility of this kind of conspiracy, and they've got their own motives, but those motives lead them simply to refuse to look at the empirical evidence as if they could know in advance that this sort of thing could not occur.
Have you had to deal with any death threats or harassment as a result of your research?
No, I haven't.
It's very good.
It's, you know, when you get to the level of somebody like Martin Luther King, who has a national following, gets on television and is leading millions of people to challenge, say, in his case, the war in Vietnam, then that sort of thing happens. But generally, with this sort of thing, they just write it out and know that you will only influence a few 100,000 at most, or a few million people, and their votes don't count for very much, so they can just basically ignore you.